All right, good morning, everybody. Um, as Sean mentioned, my name is Betty Osceola. I'm a member of the Miccosukee tribe of Indians of Florida. We have a clan system. My clan is Panther Clan. And also, I'm a mother and a grandmother and a great grandmother now. I look good, right? that Clara, medium brown. Well, I'm glad that you're taking the time out of your day to come out and spend and experience the Greater Big Cypress part of the Everglades system, because you see all the trees and the landscape, and it's so different from the water conservation areas. People don't realize that this section is part of the Greater Everglades system. My people, we call it Everglades. We still call this Everglades, and we call it Ajagwalochon Tamet. That means the Big Cypress. Um, anyways, I can speak from myself on how I was raised. And people say, oh, you're a conservationist, you're an environmentalist, you're an activist. I'm just an indigenous person doing what I was raised to do, which is to oversee the ecosystem and the landscape, to be a defender of it, to help that landscape thrive. That's how we're taught as children, that we're a part of the natural world. We're natural beings in a natural world, and we're supposed to live in harmony with the natural world and be kind of like the caretaker. And so our tribe, the Miccosukee, throughout the years, unfortunately, when people haven't wanted to listen about taking care of the environment, they've had to sue to protect that environment, for people to force people to do the right thing. And for us, it's just natural to do the right thing, because that's how we were raised. And to only, take what you need, be respectful to all of nature, and understand all of nature. Just like those trees behind you, they have feelings. They have a society, just like you have a society. And I think when you go back and try to delve into it on your own, they now have science that supports that. In the past, when indigenous people has said trees talk and they have feelings, they thought we were like crazy up here. Now they have science that proves that. Just like they have science that proves that water has feelings and memory. And so, the indigenous people weren't too far off the mark, that every living creature has its own society. Just because it doesn't look like us, just because it doesn't have eyes and a mouth, doesn't mean it does not see or speak or feel. So, and understanding that, when we go and interact with nature, we always, if we need to use something, we ask permission. And we tell that, whether it's a plant or an animal, we tell that animal what we're going to do with it. And we ask permission to take that life. Because when you eat a piece of lettuce, you just killed the lettuce to eat it. And people don't realize that everything, you have to ask its permission of what you're going to do with it. And once you have gotten that permission, then you can do what you need to do. Because everything, us and all the plants and the animals, plays its part. And human beings, the two-legged animal, likes to think it's the most important creature on the world. You know what? In the grand scheme of things, we're like at the bottom. We're like that bottom feeder. We're at the bottom. Everything else has a more important function, because without those trees, without those plants, we're not going to breathe. We have to have that air, right? And also, without this ground, and without the rock, without the mud, that's what holds everything together. And I always like to tell people, here, when you have the loose gravel in your hand, it's not really nothing, right? But just think, that one little piece with all these other little pieces together is what we're standing on. Maybe as an individual, it's not so strong, but together as a whole, it's mighty, right? Because life exists on it. And that's what we see as Mother Earth. And also people, as one person, you might not be that strong, but all the people together, like the earth, can be very powerful if they work together instead of against each other. And as indigenous people, since we understand from early childhood how everything has to work together, because everything has its part. We understand everything working together and healthy creates that balance. And when you don't have that balance, that's when everything gets thrown off. So when you go out there today in the buggies, I want you to pay attention to what you see, and maybe think to yourself, what should I, if you don't know, maybe you should ask the guys that are always coming out here, because when you come out here all the time throughout the seasons, you understand what should be happening and then what isn't. Or certain times of the year, we're starting to see at certain times of the year, nature has adjusted and man has forced that adjustment, that seasons are starting to change. So you might be seeing things this time of year that you shouldn't be seeing historically. So those are questions you need to keep in mind and ask these individuals that have built that relationship with this environment over coming out here in that interaction. And that's a lot of the problem today, society, is that we're not fostering that relationship to bringing our young people out here to connect with the environment so they can understand it, because you protect what you love. You protect what you know. And if you don't ever create those connections with that environment, those children that grow up are not going to have that urge to protect it. And so you know, when you have the trees that have to make the air, you have the ground that needs to have its rebirth cycle. So for the animals and even the plants have a source of food. When man comes and throws all of that out of whack, the renewal and rebirth cycle. Right now, this time of year is supposed to be the rebirth of an ecosystem, where you have the fire, you have the drawdowns of water, where there's still some of that moisture, because you have some smaller animal life and plant life that needs those type of conditions. You have the wading birds, where they need to be able to forage for food. On my way here, I don't live too far from here. On my way here, I saw some wood storks and some ibis and a lot of birds in portions of the canal that is more shallow, so they're able to walk around in there and feed. And even though they need to be able to have that shallow water to walk around and feed, they also need some periods where you have water coming through the system to help spur birth. So when you go into looking at the ecosystem, when they talk about Everglades restoration, which I don't believe in, by the way, I don't believe in the Everglades restoration that they're pushing, because it's not about restoring, it's only about moving water. I believe in healing the environment, doing things that heal the environment. I don't believe in building these massive big water storage facilities that they want to meter out when man feels like it needs to move. Because we saw what man felt like it needed to move, especially in my tribe's reservation when we were flooded for 6 months over the tree islands. Water over the tree islands, and Craig can talk about how later on, you know, his staff were seeing turtle eggs float around. So a cycle of life didn't survive.
That's really important, and I'm a novice when it comes to the Everglades. You've got some real experts here, but tell us about the last 15 months, what they did in Area 3 and what that was. I've seen your videos on the tree islands and what's happening to them. A lot of people don't know that this is going on.
They don't know, and also too, I don't know if you're going to go to that those sections where those hardwood hammocks with the oaks have all died out because of too much water, too long during the duration for over a number of years, have destroyed a lot of hardwood hammocks here in this part of the greater Everglades system. And where my tribe's main headquarters is, and where I operate airboats, because I run an airboat company, and I use that as an opportunity not to just educate the public, but when I go out there, whatever I see, I'll go back and use my iPhone and video what I'm seeing, so that I have, because you know, nowadays you need proof, right? You can say you saw it, but they don't believe you until you whip it out and show them. And you GPS pin it like it's right here. So for the last number of years, you know, where the tribe has lands and their federal reservation land, one, you have to know it gets polluted every day. Every day they're shoving dirty water through our reservation. so that they use the tribal lands as a way to remove that pollution. So by the time it gets to the boundary of Everglades National Park, it goes in clean. So when you hear the state saying, oh, we're at 11 parts per billion, they're talking about the entry point to Everglades National Park. They could give a rat's 2 cents, you know, if it comes dirty through the tribe's reservation. You know, I almost said ass, but yeah.
Can't say it.
Miss Osceola, Miss Osceola,
Kids here.
Yeah.
maybe you or Craig could say this, but just to illustrate your point about the difference between healing the land and simply managing water, how many different ideas has the United States government had about what to do with this land? How many different plans have been floated, from digging canals to fill
Places for people to live, so we got to drain it, right? So they started digging those canals, you know, east and west, you know, in the connecting the estuaries to Lake Okeechobee to move water out. Also south of the lake, you had the big CS&F project. Is that the correct, you know, central? I don't know what C&F stands for, but that's the canal systems that you see in Florida for flood control, to actually drain those areas so you can have agriculture and also for people to live. So when they created that project through an act of Congress, because they had to lobby for it, right? And that was in the 40s, 30s and 40s that movement went. They decided agriculture, which it is a matter of national concern, of security, because you got to have a food source, right? You can't depend on everybody else. So when they started draining the Everglades to build those areas for agriculture and development, and putting in I-75, putting in the Tamiami Trail, they created an over drainage system and started altering how the Everglades function, because it's a river, right? It starts north of Lake Okeechobee around the Kissimmee area. There's actually a marker where that starting point is, and it flowed when the Kissimmee chain of lakes got full, overflowed, and became a wide river all the way down towards Key West. And that was periodic flooding. It wasn't a constant flooding. So, you know, that as time went on, they started noticing how it was impacting the Everglades and not getting enough water, and also flushing too much water in through that system of the remaining Everglades, which happened in like the 1990s when it was over flooded and they had the great deer die off. A lot of deer drowned. You know, they sent hunters out there to, you know, harvest deer. But from one of the late Frank Denninger, you know, always said, you know, he would not, after that, he was so traumatized because they didn't go in to kill deer. They were actually dragging deer out of the water and putting in their airboats and taking it out. And I forgot, what's the estimate of deer that died? Was it 4,000 or 3,000?
Yeah, between 3 and 4.
Between 3,000 and 4,000 deer drowned.
70 to 80.
because of the mismanagement of water.
Because of the mismanagement of water. And they haven't learned, because every year in that same area, in the conservation areas, and where the tribe is in conservation area 3A, where the tribe has reservation and lease lands, they'll hold water in there from anywhere from 3 months to this last time was 6 months. They held water in there, and water on some of the islands were up to my thigh. And scientists will say that a tree island after 30 days of inundation starts to die, because that water starts impacting the root systems of the trees, and then the soil starts washing away, and you start getting the island, especially one of the islands that we use, we're noticing that it's shrinking because of that. It's getting smaller. And during that time where they held that water back, a lot of people thought that that water was coming off the agricultural area, the EAA, that some people love to hate on. Well, we kept saying no, because even water management, even in their meetings, acknowledged that that water that was flooding the conservation 3A was from Palm Beach and Broward County, because there was so much water that the canal systems that the water management uses to flush water out and send it out to tide, they couldn't use that because the urban areas were using it to drain their cities. And also, they were also a lot, even though you're not supposed to back pump that water into the conservation areas, they were sending water from the urban areas into the conservation areas. And that's runoff from the yards, the roads, whatever, whatnot. So those decisions were to protect human life. And a lot of times when we make decisions to protect human life, those decisions help further kill an environment. So there has to be that balance. And now when I talk about Everglades restoration, of what you have a train of thought where you have the tribes on one side and a group of individuals that wants to heal and reconnect those landscapes and remove some of those canal systems so water can flow naturally. And then you have other people, and I think they're finally starting to admit it, that it's all about urban water supply. It came out in a meeting, I think a couple weeks ago, that I missed, that they talked about water storage and urban water supply. I'm like, thank God somebody finally admitted that's what it's.
Said it out loud.
They said it out loud what Everglades restoration is.
Ms. Osceola, we have a number of educators here
Yes.
today. Some who I'm going to introduce. We have some
Yeah.
people who are district administrators. We have a school board member here. We have teachers here. We have some students here. What message what could we do as people in the educational world? What can we do to help you in your fight to bring healing to the land?
I think the most important thing is that as an educator, because I used to teach in the tribe school in preschool, and I've always been an educator and volunteering with the tribe and taking kids out to understand how the environment has to live, the ecosystem. You need to educate those children how an ecosystem functions, to understand it, because when they don't understand it, that's why we're getting the decisions we're getting today. They have to understand how that ecosystem needs to function.
What's the best way to get that understanding?
They need to come out here. They need to come out here and hear from the people that understand it. And a lot of times it's not knowledge that's gained out of a book. The book knowledge helps reinforce what you learn by experiencing it. And there's a lot of people that have many years of actually observation, right? Because usually you get that observation after you finish college, right? Then you get your actual lab. Well, there's a lot of people that got their lab all their life and understand it. So you have to bring the children out to the outdoors, to whatever ecosystem it is, because Florida is very diverse in how it is, but that diversity, all of it has to work together. You can't concentrate on saving one part of an ecosystem and then kill the rest, because by killing the rest, you're eventually going to kill the other part that you're trying to save. And that's what we're doing today, is all in the effort to save Everglades National Park, we're killing the rest of the ecosystem to protect that park. But they don't realize by killing this ecosystem, you're going to kill that one. And it's also understanding that I always tell people, whatever I post on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok, whatever I post, don't take my word for it. Go back and do your research. Never accept what somebody says as the truth. Always question it. Find your facts and try to make that informed decisions. Because a lot of times what I see happening, and this is what you need to tell your students, that they need to do their research. If somebody has, says that this is what a project is going to do, they need to go back and fact truth that. Because a lot of times, a lot of these major organizations that are jump on the bandwagon of a project, they don't research it. I have taken people from Sierra Club, higher level people, that put these massive documents out to support a project, and they've never been in the Everglades, but they're talking and writing about the Everglades as they know it like the back of their hand. And then when I ask, where'd you get your talking points? Why did you think this project was good when this is what's going to happen out here? Because so-and-so said. So-and-so gave talking points or writing points, and they just incorporated it into this massive document. And the problem is decision makers take those documents from those big organizations. They put a lot of weight behind it. So even then, you have to, when somebody is trying to get you to vote for something or to be behind pushing a project, a lot of times these people that are talking about it have never been out here and they don't really know what they wrote about. And I'm going to put an example out there. in January, we took out a group of, and Craig was a part of that. These are the scientist that is in charge of our tribe's wildlife department, and a group of other scientists that the tribe has and tribal members. We took out some engineers and modelers that are part of Everglades restoration. And we were asking a lot of questions because at that point in time we were on the tree islands still had some water on them. And one of the islands that the tribe has designated for the children to plant crops and do activities in the outdoor, which is very important. You have to do activities out in the door, so they outside, so they get used to that and understand how that environment works. And we on this particular island still had water inundation on it, but the modeling that these guys had done at that particular time when we were standing on that island with water, according to that model, that island shouldn't have water. Because, and we were saying, you know, in the gauge that they read from their offices was a great distance, because it's a 2 mile by 2 by 2 is 2 mile by 2 mile. And the gauge where it was at, that reading on that gauge, whatever they were seeing should not have been happening on that island according to that model. So when they start saying we modeled it and this is what's going to happen, they don't really know.
Ms. Osceola, I want to thank you for being out